I was at the farthest corner of the terrace when Marius finally came into the lighted salon. There was a heat in all my veins still that breathed as if it had its own life, and I could see far beyond the dim hulking shapes of the islands. I could hear the progress of a ship along a distant coast, but all I kept thinking was that if Enkil came at me again, I could jump over this railing. I could get into the sea and swim. I kept feeling his hands on the sides of my head, his foot on my chest. I stood against the stone railing shivering, and there was blood all over my hands still from the bruises on my face, which had already completely healed. I'm sorry I did it, I said as soon as Marius came out of the salon. I don't know why I did it. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry, I swear it. I'm sorry, Marius. I'll never do anything you tell me not to do again. He stood with his arms folded, looking at me. He was glowering. Lestat, what did I say last night? He asked. You are the damnedest creature. Marius, forgive me. Please forgive me. I didn't think anything would happen. I was sure nothing would happen. He gestured for me to be quiet, for us to go down onto the rocks together, and he slipped over the railing and went first. I came behind him, vaguely delighted with the ease of it, but too dazed still to care about things like that. Her presence was all over me like a fragrance, only she had no fragrance except that of the incense and the flowers that must have somehow managed to permeate her hard white skin. How strangely fragile she had seemed in spite of that hardness. We went down over the slippery boulders until we reached the white beach, and we walked together in silence, looking out over the snow-white froth that leapt against the rocks, or streaked towards us on the smooth, hard-packed white sand. The wind roared in my ears, and I felt the sense of solitude this always creates in me, the roaring wind that blots out all other sensations as well as sound. And I was getting calmer and more agitated and miserable at the same time. Marius had slipped his arm around me the way Gabrielle used to do it, and I paid no attention to where we were going, quite surprised when I saw we'd come to a small inlet of the water, where a longboat lay at anchor with only a single pair of oars. When we stopped, I said again, I'm sorry I did it. I swear I am. I didn't believe. Don't tell me you regret it, Marius said calmly. You were not at all sorry that it occurred and that you were the cause of it, now that you are safe and not crushed like an eggshell on the chapel floor. Oh, but that's not the point, I said. I started crying. I took out my handkerchief, grand accoutrement of an 18th century gentleman, and wiped the blood off my face. I could feel her holding me, feel her blood, feel his hands. The whole thing commenced to reenact itself if Marius hadn't come in time. But what did happen, Marius? What did you see? I wish we could get beyond his hearing, Marius said wearily. It's madness to speak or think anything that could disturb him any further. I have to let him lapse back. And now he seemed truly furious, and he turned his back on me. But how could I not think about it? I wished I could open my head and pull the thoughts out of it. They were rocketing through me like her blood. In her body was locked a mind still, an appetite, a blazing spiritual core whose heat had moved through me like liquid lightning. And without question, Enkil had a death hold upon her. I loathed him. I wanted to destroy him. And my brain seized upon all sorts of mad notions, that somehow he could be destroyed without endangering us as long as she remained. But that made little sense. Hadn't the demons entered first into him? But what if that wasn't so? Stop it, young one, Marius flashed. I went to crying again. I felt my neck where she had touched it, and licked my lips and tasted her blood again. I looked at the scattered stars above, and even these benign and eternal things seemed menacing and senseless, and I felt a scream swelling dangerously in my throat. The effects of her blood were waning already. The clear vision was clouded, and my limbs were once again my limbs. They might be stronger, yes, but the magic was dying. The magic had left only something stronger than memory of the circuit of the blood through us both. Marius, what happened? I said, shouting over the wind. Don't be angry with me. Don't turn away from me. I can't. Shh, Lestat, he said. He came back and took me by the arm. Don't worry about my anger, he said. It's unimportant, and it is not directed at you. Give me a little more time to collect myself. But did you see what happened between her and me? He was looking out to sea. The water looked perfectly black and the foam perfectly white. Yes, I saw, he said. I took the violin and I wanted to play it for them, I was thinking. Yes, I know, of course. That music would affect them, especially that music, that strange, unnatural-sounding music. You know how a violin... Yes. Marius, she gave me... And she took... I know. And he keeps her there. He keeps her prisoner. Lestat, I beg you. He was smiling wearily, sadly. Imprison him, Marius, the way that they did. And let her go. You dream, my child, he said. You dream. He turned and he left me, gesturing for me to leave him alone. He went down to the wet beach and let the water lap at him as he walked back and forth. I tried to get calm again. It seemed unreal to me that I had ever been any place but this island, that the world of mortals was out there, that the strange tragedy and menace of those who must be kept was unknown beyond these wet and shining cliffs. Finally, Marius made his way back. Listen to me, he said. Straight west is an island that is not under my protection, and there is an old Greek city on the northern tip of it, where the seamen's taverns stay open all night. Go there now in the boat. Hunt and forget what has happened here. Assess the new powers you might have from her, but try not to think of her or him. Above all, try not to plot against him. Before dawn, come back to the house. It won't be difficult. You'll find a dozen open doors and windows. Do as I say now for me. I bowed my head. It was the one thing under heaven that could distract me, that could wipe out any noble or enervating thoughts. Human blood and human struggle and human death. And without protest, I made my way out through the shallow water to the boat. In the early hours, I looked at my reflection in a fragment of metallic mirror pinned to the wall of a seaman's filthy bedroom in a little inn. I saw myself in my brocade coat and white lace and my face warm from killing, and the dead man sprawled behind me across the table. He still held the knife with which he tried to cut my throat, and there was the bottle of wine with the drug in it which I'd kept refusing with playful protestations until he'd lost his temper and tried the last resort. His companion lay dead on the bed. I looked at the young blonde-haired rake in the mirror. Well, if it isn't the vampire Lestat, I said, but all the blood in the world couldn't stop the horrors from coming over me when I went to my rest. I couldn't stop thinking of her, wondering if it was her laugh I had heard in my sleep the night before. And I wondered that she had told me nothing in the blood until I closed my eyes, and quite suddenly things came back to me, of course, wonderful things, and coherent as they were magical. She and I were walking down a hallway together, not here, but in a place I knew. I think it was a palace in Germany where Haydn wrote his music, and she spoke casually, as she had 1,000 times to me. But tell me about all this. What do the people believe? What turns the wheels inside of them? What are these marvelous inventions? She wore a fashionable black hat with a great white plume in its broad brim and a white veil tied round the top of it and under her chin. And her face was merely beginning, merely young. When I opened my eyes, I knew Marius was waiting for me. I came out into the chamber and saw him standing by the empty violin case with his back to the open window over the sea. You have to go now, my young one, he said sadly. I had hoped for more time, but that is impossible. The boat is waiting to take you away. Because of what I did? I said miserably. So I was being cast out? He's destroyed the things in the chapel, Marius said, but his voice was asking for calm. He put his arm around my shoulder, and he took my valise in his other hand. We went towards the door. I want you to go now, because it is the only thing that will quiet him. And I want you to remember, not his anger, but everything that I told you, and to be confident that we will meet again as we said. But are you afraid of him, Marius? Oh no, Lestat. Don't carry this worry away with you. He has done little things like this before, now and then. He does not know what he does, really. I'm convinced of that. He only knows that someone stepped between him and Akasha. Time is all that is required for him to lapse back. There it was, that phrase again, lapse back. And she sits as if she never moved, doesn't she? I asked. I want you away now so that you don't provoke him, Marius said, leading me out of the house and towards the cliffside stairs. He continued speaking. Whatever ability we creatures have to move objects mentally, to ignite them, to do any real harm by the power of the mind does not extend very far from the physical spot where we stand. So I want you gone from here tonight and on your way to America, all the sooner to return to me when he is no longer agitated and no longer remembers, and I will have forgotten nothing and will be waiting for you. I saw the galley in the harbor below when we reached the edge of the cliff. The stairs looked impossible, but they weren't impossible. What was impossible was that I was leaving Marius and this island right now. You needn't come down with me, I said, taking the valise from him. I was trying not to sound bitter and crestfallen. After all, I had caused this. I would rather not weep in front of others. Leave me here. I wish we had had a few more nights together, he said, for us to consider in quiet what took place, but my love goes with you. And try to remember the things I've told you. When we meet again, we'll have much to say to each other. He paused. What is it, Marius? Tell me truthfully, he asked. Are you sorry that I came for you in Cairo? Sorry that I brought you here?" "How could I be?" I asked. "I'm only sorry that I'm going. What if I can't find you again or you can't find me?" "When the time is right, I'll find you," he said. "And always remember you have the power to call to me as you did before. When I hear that call, I can bridge distances to answer that I could never bridge on my own. If the time is right, I will answer. Of that you can be sure." I nodded. There was too much to say, and I didn't speak a word. We embraced for a long moment, and then I turned and slowly started my descent, knowing he would understand why I didn't look back.